Well, at least there were dragons? Greetings and welcome once again to Roman of the Empire. Today we are going to be reviewing House of the Dragon Episode 1, A Contested Birth. So, this is the new Game of Thrones series set about 200 years before the events in Game of Thrones. There are a lot of different characters in this episode. The ones that we're going to be talking about specifically are King Viserys Targaryen, Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, Prince Damon Targaryen, Otto Hightower, and Alicent Hightower. Those are the primarily focused characters in this episode. And I want to start with, I didn't hate this episode, but I was largely underwhelmed. After the disastrous ending of Game of Thrones, and I think that is a pretty universally agreed upon opinion, I was hoping that HBO would have pulled out the stops and really pushed for good writing and story and plot, but I felt they kind of pulled back. You still have the gratuitous sex, which I'm not a fan of, as I've always felt in Game of Thrones. It literally pulled you out of the story, and I will submit, I never want to see Matt Smith doing that again. You've tarnished my image of the Doctor. You still have the violence, which in this type of show is a thing. There's all the political maneuvering, the plotting, and the Iron Throne. But in the end, I was just kind of, meh. It was all right. It's all right. So, I think the cast was capable enough. I don't particularly like Paddy Considine's King Viserys. Why? I don't think he looks like a Targaryen. That's really it. His performance was fine. The look of the man doesn't look like a Targaryen. Matt Smith as Damon Targaryen is definitely a standout, but I fear he may be wasted in the series. I guess we'll see. And the look of the show was okay. The CGI isn't great, but the halls, the castles, the wardrobe, all the bits and pieces I thought looked fine. I could nitpick a lot on that, but I don't think there's really a need to. I think it looked okay. So, that's the opening. Now we're going to go into plot summary, and there's going to be spoilers, of course. The episode begins with a Lord of the Rings style exposition explaining the old King Jaehaerys the First was forced to choose a successor, and his sons died, and he didn't select his eldest descendant, which would have been his daughter, but instead opted for Viserys Targaryen, played by Paddy Considine, his eldest male. And it goes on about a woman never inheriting the Iron Throne, which kind of starts off at a level I didn't want to, but that wasn't as heavy a thing as I thought it was going to be. So now we are 9 years into Viserys' reign. It's 172 years before Daenerys, so for timeline purposes. Rhaenyra, who is your main character, she's the princess, daughter of Viserys. She's riding on Dragonback, and she's flying over the red roofs of King's Landing, which takes you back to that episode when Daenerys is riding a dragon over King's Landing and setting it all on fire and killing everyone. So she's meeting with her best friend, Alicent Hightower. She is the daughter of Otto Hightower, the Hand. And her mom, Queen Emma, I think that's how it's pronounced. Don't get used to her, so it doesn't matter. She's 9 months pregnant with what the king is sure will be a son, because that's a big thing through the first half of the episode, all the way to the end, really. So the king is with the council There's an issue with pirates, some fellow called the Crab Feeder, and he's really reining in the pirates. And the concern, of course, is now he's developing a lot of power. And that's just kind of a side issue. I'm sure we're going to talk about it like later down the road. And the other issue of discussion is Prince Damon, again played by Matt Smith. He is commander of the City Watch, and he is being a dick. Anybody he perceives as a criminal, him and his boys just go through and they are hacking and slashing and hacking and slashing. And it's a messy business. You see where the Targaryens get their name from a character like Damon. He is who I feel is most like a Targaryen. So the council is meeting about this as well, and of course Damon shows up. And what we do get from the interaction here is a rivalry established between Damon, who is the king's brother, and Otto Hightower, who is the king's hand. They clearly don't like each other, and they are pushing against each other. So next day, the king is having a tournament in honor of the upcoming birth of his son. Damon arrives, of course, and he's not he's a skilled competitor, but he's also plays dirty competitor. And he low blows Otto's son on the horse with his lance, so he tumbles head over foot. But Otto doesn't have a lot of time to dwell on this, as word is that the queen's labor isn't going well. The baby is breached. And of course, in these times, that wasn't good. They couldn't turn the baby. And the king comes to her side. Finally, he's not there during the birth, but that wasn't uncommon back then, so I can't really, fault the dude for it. He shows up, and the doctors are like, well, we can cut the baby out. Better to save one than lose two. Well, they lose two. So the king, his son dies, his wife dies in childbirth. And things move pretty quickly here. Now we're at the funeral pyre, and he is so grief-stricken, he's unable to give the order. So Rhaenyra gives the familiar term Dracarys, and the dragon sets them ablaze. So now the council is trying to move fast here because no one likes a vacuum. So now there's not an apparent heir to the throne, except for Damon, who is first in line, and they don't think he is stable enough to do it. He would destabilize the realm. So Rhaenyra is the biological heir, but she's a girl. Oops, and it was the times. So the king gets kind of pissed off during this council meeting. He's like, I'm still grieving the loss of my wife and son. Let me be for a moment. Otto summons his daughter, Alicent, who is the friend of Rhaenyra, and tells her to go to the king's chambers and comfort him. This is an uncomfortable scene. His intent is clear. I don't think Alicent gets it, but she doesn't really want to do what her father wants her to do. Duh. But she goes, she brings a book about history, and she actually does say some comforting things to the king. So I actually don't think it played out as Otto was hoping, that she would be the consort of the king after this. It was a slimy move, but it is not unlike Game of Thrones. So elsewhere, Damon is at an orgy, and this is, again, I don't like seeing Matt Smith in these spots because it soils the doctor for me. He toasts Viserys' son, who didn't last long, the heir for a day. Well, word about this toast gets back to Viserys, and he's legitimately pissed. He's sitting on the Iron Throne, admonishing his brother about, what the fuck, dude. And Damon jumps right in, though. You've been king for 10 years, and not once have you asked me to be your hand. Speaking of hands, I just knocked my mic because I talk with mine because I'm mildly insane. Just go with it. And Viserys is like, what are you talking about? And and why would I do that? And Damon's like, because you're weak. You're weak, and the council knows it, and they will prey on you for their own ends. Well, that's not very nice. So Viserys was like, you know what? You can go screw yourself. My daughter is going to be the heir. You need to fly off back home to Ruinstone to be with your wife. And Damon leaves. He tries to approach the throne, but the King's Guard stop him because now you can see the wheels already turning in Damon's head, though. He's not happy with this decision. I get it. So Viserys now actually tells Rhaenyra she is going to be his heir, and why it's so important, and why, and he's like, I wasted all my time wishing for a son, and I should have been focusing on you. You have all the qualities you need. Okay, nice, good recovery. So he asks her, why do we have power? And she thinks on it, and it's the dragons. As long as they control the dragons, they control the power. That's pretty much it. And the dragons really allow them to control them. It's a perception of power. So important to note. So her father explains about a prophecy of a long winter to come. This is what we know from our Game of Thrones and the Nightwalkers. And that a Targaryen must be on the throne to fulfill the prophecy known as the Song of Fire and Ice, to unite the people and save the world. Now, we know how the story ends, but at this point, it just kind of is what it is. And that's pretty much where it is. At the end, you have all the lords of the land swearing their fealty to Viserys and now his heir, Rhaenyra. That was it. So, again, I didn't hate this show. And I really liked Game of Thrones season 1 through 5 specifically. And I think, again, that's pretty universally accepted. But I hope the show improves. I hope it picks up. There's room for improvement. And this isn't the worst show on TV right now or streaming. Heaven knows Disney Plus is giving us plenty of that. I'm talking to you, She-Hulk. So it's okay, but I don't want to have to settle for okay. So I'm not saying it's dead in the water. Other people are probably going to hate it a lot more than I did. I thought it was all right. So take that with a grain of salt. Watch this one if you want to. I'm not going to recommend you don't watch it. Again, because it might pick up. It might get better. And it's not the worst thing out there. So if you're looking for something to kill the time, this would certainly do it. So anyway, this has been Roman of the Empire signing off. Please like and subscribe. Be kind.